used to think HR was neutral, that they were the ones who kept us safe, who stood between us and the people in power. But that was before the night I stayed late and saw something I wasn't supposed to see. It started like any other evening. The office was empty, the lights dimmed. The only sound was the low hum of the air conditioning and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights overhead. I was there finishing a quarterly report. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. Or at least, I thought they had. At around 10:47 p.m. I stepped out for coffee. The break room was dark. The machine beeped as I filled my cup. And that's when I heard it. Voices. Low, urgent, coming from the conference room down the hall. I froze. The lights in that hallway were off, but I could see movement. Two figures standing close, too close for business as usual. One of them turned slightly. Even in the dim light, I recognized him. Andy Byron, our CEO. And standing next to him, Kristen Cabot, Chief People Officer, Head of HR. Their faces were too near. I stepped back into the shadows. I didn't want to be seen. Didn't want to know. But I couldn't stop staring. Kristen placed a hand on Andy's chest. He covered her hand with his own. And then they both laughed softly, like nothing in the world could touch them. Like they owned this place. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The sound felt too loud in the silence. I fumbled to silence it. When I looked up, they were gone. The conference room door clicked shut, and the hallway was empty again. The next morning in the break room, I overheard two colleagues whispering, "Did you hear about Mia?" "Yeah, she's out just like that." "She filed a complaint, didn't she?" "Against who?" "Guess." I wanted to believe it was all a coincidence. That what I saw meant nothing. But then I remembered Mia was our top performer. She'd been on track for a promotion. And then suddenly, she was gone. That night, as I worked late again, an email appeared in my inbox. Sender unknown. Subject: want to know the truth about HR and your CEO. There was no body text. Just one line. Check the promotion list for the past 6 months. I hesitated. The rational part of me said to ignore it. But something deep down, something cold, told me I was already in too deep. If I opened that file, there would be no turning back. The email wouldn't leave my mind. Check the promotion list for the past 6 months. I told myself not to open it, that it wasn't my business. But deep down, I already knew. I had to look. That night, I stayed late again. The office was silent, just me, and the glow of my monitor. I opened the internal HR portal, typed in my credentials. The list loaded slowly, like the system itself knew I wasn't supposed to see it. Row after row of names appeared. At first, nothing seemed unusual, until I saw it. The same pattern. 3 promotions, same department, same manager. And all 3 had one thing in common. They were all close to Kristen Cabot, our Chief People Officer. I thought about what I'd seen in the conference room. Kristen's hand on Andy's chest, the way he smiled at her. And now, this. I scrolled further. 2 more names, both underqualified, both skyrocketed up the ladder. And then, Mia's name crossed out. No promotion, no job. Just a note. Resigned voluntarily. But I knew better. Mia didn't resign. She fought for her role. And then, she vanished. I closed the tab quickly. My palms were sweating. I felt like someone was watching me. But the office was empty. Wasn't it? I turned. Nothing. Just the flickering lights above the break room. The next day in the cafeteria, I overheard 2 senior managers talking. Andy's pushing Kristen for a seat on the board. Figures. She's been his shadow for years. You think it's just business. You know it's not. Later that afternoon, an email arrived. Sender unknown. Subject: stop digging, or you'll end up like Mia. I froze. Someone knew. That night I couldn't sleep. Was I really ready for this? To pull the thread and risk unraveling everything? Or should I walk away, whop, like everyone else? The next morning, I walked into the office. Kristen was there, smiling, calm, like she owned the air around her. And Andy, laughing at some joke she whispered. I clenched my fists. This wasn't just about me anymore. If I stayed silent, how many more would they bury that night I installed a keylogger on the HR system? One move, one risk. There was no turning back now. A message appeared on my screen. Unknown, you really shouldn't have done that. It didn't take long for them to realize. Someone was digging, and now the game had begun. The morning felt heavier. Emails came in slower, people spoke in hushed tones, and Kristen, she was smiling, but her eyes scanned the room like a predator. At 10:32 a.m., she stopped by my desk. "Aditya," she said, "do you have a moment?" Her tone was sweet, but underneath, I heard it. The edge. We stepped into her glass-walled office. She closed the door. The sound echoed. "You've been working late," she said. I nodded, trying to get ahead on my workload. "That's good," she replied. "We need people who are committed." She leaned forward. Her voice dropped lower. "But be careful. People who overextend themselves burn out fast." Our eyes locked, and in that moment I realized. She knew. Later that afternoon, Andy showed up on our floor. He never came down here, but today, he made it a point to chat with every team. And when he passed my cubicle, he stopped. "How's everything going, Aditya?" His voice was light, friendly, but I could feel the weight in his stare. That night, I checked the HR system. The keylogger worked. Every email, every message, every deleted complaint. I had it all. But as I scrolled, something caught my eye. A folder, newly created. Aditya Monitoring. They weren't just watching everyone else. They were watching me. I wanted to quit, to walk away. But then I remembered Mia and all the others. If I stopped now, everything they'd done would stay buried. So I stayed and planned my next move. I compiled the evidence, screenshots, voice recordings, call logs, and sent them to one address, Board to Astronomer Inc. Subject: your CEO and HR head are corrupt. Here's proof. The next day, IT announced a security sweep. Company-wide audit, they said. But I knew. This wasn't routine. They were looking for me. Kristen walked past my desk. Her perfume lingered. She stopped. "You've been quiet today," she said. I forced a smile, just focused on my work. She tilted her head, almost amused. "Good, stay focused." Then she walked away. That night I received an email. Sender unknown. Subject: you're not the only one playing this game. There was an attachment. I hesitated, then opened it. A photo of me. Sitting at my desk, hands on the keyboard, from inside the office. It all came crashing down, faster than I expected, and slower than they deserved. At 9 a.m. sharp, the board summoned Andy and Kristen. No one knew why. Or at least, they pretended not to. The office was silent. Even the air felt heavier. I watched from my desk as Kristen walked past, her back straight, her chin high. But her eyes, there was fear in them now. Andy followed close behind. For the first time, he didn't smile. 2 hours later, word spread. They weren't coming back. An email hit our inboxes. Effective immediately, Andy Byron and Kristen Cabot have been removed from their positions pending investigation into ethical misconduct. I thought I'd feel relief, but all I felt was empty. People cheered quietly. Finally, someone whispered, but no one knew. No one knew it was me. That evening, a new email arrived. Sender: board chair. Subject: your loyalty and discretion haven't gone unnoticed. The message was short. We're appointing an interim HR director until things settle. We'd like you to consider the position. I froze. This was it. The chance to fix what they broke. To protect people. To make sure no one else ever went through what Mia did. Or was it the start of something else? The same power, the same control. Would it change me too? I accepted. And on my first day, I sat in Kristen's old office. Same glass walls, same leather chair, same faint smell of her perfume lingering in the air. As I logged into the system, I saw it. A folder. Mia investigation archived. And next to it, a new folder. Aditya Monitoring. I opened it. A single file. Everyone thinks they're the hero at first. I stared at the screen. Was this what she felt? When she first sat here, I picked it up. "Hello," a voice on the other end whispered. "Welcome to the top, Aditya. Let's see how long you last." Text on screen. "Power doesn't corrupt. It only shows who you really are.